Happy Good Friday, traders. I'm going to do a quick rundown of the markets. As you can see here, I got a downtrending channel, which the markets have been in, and we still close below the 61.8% fib and the 23.6% uptrend fib. So we're still firmly in bearish territory. This market's trying to figure out which way it wants to go, and you can tell right there at the close, the market's decided to dump, and there's some weak hands to the long side, and they're just trying to decide which way they want to take this market come Monday morning. I did notice something going on today, though. They weren't willing to press their bets against tech going into the 3-day weekend. I guess they felt like that they had too much short exposure into the FANG stocks, and so that is a bullish indication. If they're starting to rotate back into tech, that's something you have to think about going into a 3-day weekend. But at any rate, we need a closing price above 26.50, and once that happens with the SPY here at this point, if you get above 26.50 and get it closed, we're probably going to start seeing a trend change to the upside. Then again, if we close down below Friday's open, then we're probably going to have a continuation to the downside. So just keep those ideas in mind. Now, I want to talk about your technology sector, or your NASDAQ. And everybody was just going on and on about the technologies finally breaking down and all that stuff. And I'm telling you right now, we're solidly in an uptrend. And we've come down, and we're areas where in the past we've found some responsive buying. And that's, exactly what we saw with the short covering rally in the tech going into the 3-day weekend. So just keep this in mind. Don't, there's no sense throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's tech is still a bullish chart. Now we are below. We closed right back inside the cloud, and we tried to push above it there Friday. So there are some bullish indications here that the markets are trying to push higher in technology. So just keep that in mind. And one thing I want to show you about that, and I want to talk about your SMH, your semiconductor index, which has been a leading force for these markets higher. And you see, we closed above the 61.8 fib on the primary long-term trend, and on a slightly above average volume, going into a 3-day weekend. So, this is the driving force, and so just keep that in mind. That's what's been taking the technology. A lot of it's been going higher because of your semiconductors, and we're breaking back up to the upside, in my opinion. So, that's still a little early to say, but just something to keep in mind. And we are a little bit weaker on this shorter term time frame, but I can easily see us going back up to 106.30 before any type of further weakness. Now your IWM is kind of consolidating right here. We're channeling a little bit here, and that's why I've got the horizontal channel, and we closed right at the 50% fib on the horizontal. So it's trying to decide which way it wants to go. But keep in mind with this whole tariff news and stuff, the stocks that should be benefiting the most, assuming the markets hold up, which should be in the Russell, because domestic securities are going to outperform the international if you start with a tariff issues. So just keep that in mind. We had a little bit slightly below average volume. So this is just one sector you may want to look to the long side if these markets do decide to hold up here. Now, some chart patterns I want to talk about here. Google, to start off with, had a really good day Friday, and we've been seeing considerable bearish flow, large flow, and we got this downtrend. And if the markets were to catch a bid come Monday, Google is likely to have a substantial short squeeze because they've really been loading the boat to the short side. So just keep this one on your radar for a short squeeze potential Monday morning. Amazon has just been a beast. Uh, all depending on how the markets, it closed right here at a resistance area, so it even closed fairly strong. Um, there's a gap down off the Trump news this week. He was talking about how they're not paying their fair share of taxes and they're wiping out too many jobs and stuff. And it was bearish talk, but it really has little to do with the actual company fundamentals. That's just political headline news risk. So, in my opinion, there's a really substantial chance we're going to be rallying in Amazon come Monday morning, which is a very heavy weighting in the XLY, consumer discretionary, along with your technology XLK indexes. So I really think that there's a pretty good chance we're going to fill that gap come Monday morning. And to validate my claim here on your XLK, this is a pattern that I drew a couple weeks ago actually. And we came right up to the line there Friday, and we got a little rejected into the close. And my point is, into the close, we got the sell-off. So we were actually right here at the highs going into the close. So when we open Monday morning, if we open a flat, uh, it's anybody's guess. But my point is, we are potentially having a trend reversal to the upside and a short squeeze into the technology space. So be prepared that there's something going on there that they just traders, they did not want to stay short going into Monday into the technology, in my opinion, based on the volume and price patterns that I was seeing. Nvidia is still a very super strong stock despite a lot of bad news that's been hitting the driverless cars and stuff. This is one that I personally think we're nearing a topping pattern for Nvidia. So be careful. It is a semiconductor, but it seems like a lot of these companies are going to do away with the whole driverless car idea, which I totally agree with that. I think it's nuts even to attempt it. So be careful on this one. Uh, we just barely poked above this range. It wouldn't take much of anything to start seeing some more weakness into this stock. Netflix, it's had incredible fund inflows. So, we've had a little bit of responsive selling here recently, but we came right down to a bounce point right here, and it immediately was bought up and rallied. Short squeeze there Friday. So just keep this one on your radar. It's still a little early for this one to be to say that the downtrend is over. Basically, we had the short squeeze, and it was on extremely high volume. So there was a lot of interest in this name at these price points. So that's something to really be considered. You got two back-to-back high volume days. That typically indicates a bottoming pattern. So keep that one on your radar. Another news-driven headline there on U.S. Steel. We had an analyst come out, and this is a reference bouncing point potentially for U.S. Steel, and had an analyst come out, and he literally raised his price targets. So just keep that in mind. He got a price target of $50 for this year for U.S. Steel. So keep that in mind. And your XLB, which U.S. Steel is weighted in that index, I want to point out right here that we could be potentially coming out of the downtrend and moving to the upside for at the very least, a bear flag rally. Your casino and gambling space has had an extreme amount of bullish activity in the options of the past couple weeks, and as of today, we had a downtrend change in Wyndham Resorts. So it could very easily be running all the way back up to the highs going into their earnings. So keep that in mind. The 201 area, it's very much in the cards considering all the option activity that I'm seeing. So I did want to point that we did have slightly below average volume on this breakout. So That is a little worrisome, so I just wanted to point that out. But we did have a trend breakout, and it caused forced short covering. Okay. We had a trend change in Facebook, and they came in and droves. It as above average volume again, and so it was a little bit more than just short covering going on here on Facebook. So keep in mind that this could be a bottoming pattern for Facebook. And you know, we were getting worse news in Facebook, and they were still buying it up down here at these lows. So um, this could be a bottoming process. You know, as the news is coming out, there seems to be a lot of interest to buy Facebook at these price points. At least for a short-term flagging pattern, that's kind of what I'm thinking. You know, I'm thinking of a price target of the 168 area, and then a continuation possibly lower. Another one that I'm looking at, that's Goldman Sachs going into next week, and we have a potential trend change, which typically leads to a short squeeze. It may have volume, it may not have volume behind it, but that's just something I wanted to point out. This might have some impact on your financials if Goldman Sachs starts catching a bid Monday morning. It's still no clear indication what's going to happen here, but you know, you see what we're happening with our XLF. We closed up here to where we're going to be potentially crossing right out of this downtrending channel on our financials. So keep that in mind. There might be rotation into financials, which that is quite bullish for the markets come Monday morning. Tesla. I do have this. I bought this for the April contracts. I did sell way too early on some of my weekly positions, but I did fill both on the weekly and the monthly positions on my options. But I got in right down here on the 249.60 area. Uh, I saw it below the 200 day, and we had some Fibonacci fan support, uh, weekly support right down here, and then a shorter time frame support. So we had three things given support right down here at this area for a potential bounce trade, and I can easily see it coming back up and filling the gap up to the 277.50 area uh, quite easily come Monday morning, especially if we start seeing some sort of buying into the FANG stock. So there could be, this is a buy, what they call that, if you do counts on your candles and stuff, this is the number 3. This is a very bullish candle for a bottoming, for a trend reversal signal. So we could easily see a massive gap up in Tesla come Monday morning. That's just some of the major things I wanted to talk about. Despite the end of the day sell-off, I do think we are setting up for, at the very least, a short-term bounce in the markets with a potential bear flag formation until proven otherwise. So be quite careful that to be short these markets. I think volatility is going to start coming in, and so these high premiums are going to start coming out a little bit on these options and stuff. So just keep that in mind, and good trading, and leave comments at the bottom of the video if you can, and I'd like to hear back from you guys. Okay, thanks a lot.